Sue grew up liking superheroes because of her father's comic book collection. Her favorite is Supermoon, a regular girl who was teased for having odd hair before she was given superpowers and turned into a superhero. Sue wishes real life were as simple as Supermoon, who is aware of who she is and what she needs to do. She is a very lonesome girl who is always troubled in school, and she wishes she had a special talent every day so that someone would pay attention to her. Sue is even more irritated by her mother Maria since she neglects her family and is constantly preoccupied with her career at a prominent lab. After class one day, Sue gets picked up by her dad Christopher, and the two of them head to her mother's job to surprise her for her birthday. Sue is hoping that her mother would now take an interest in her. Maria is giving a presentation today on NT 2060, a program that would stop all illnesses, at a scientific gathering that Dr. Drill is hosting. While Sue erases some equations from the board to write a kind note, Christopher lights the birthday candles as Sue and Christopher break inside the lab. Sadly, this activates the fire alarm, which forces Maria and her helper Lenia to leave the event to check on the fire. Maria snaps at them both and yells that her family doesn't realize how crucial this is as soon as she sees the board. Sue, who is deeply upset by her mother's remarks, hurls the birthday cake in anger after the grown-ups have left. This unintentionally activates a machine and starts a process. When a terrified Sue attempts to stop it by pushing random buttons, the temperature control only becomes extremely unstable, and the lab's AI triggers a lockdown mechanism, keeping Sue inside. Sue is instructed to cease pressing buttons by the AI voice, but she defies it and rushes to the reactor, which then just breaks. Although the doors are still locked, Sue tries to flee as the reactor suddenly erupts with a brilliant light. Sue is only slightly hurt when the ambulance arrives, but she has no memory of what happened. Sue is upset to see Maria talking to Drill, rather than calling to see how his daughter is doing. When Lenia informs Christopher he may take his daughter home, Sue notices that a wound is glowing blue while riding home, but she doesn't comment on it. Instead, she complains to her father about how her mother prefers the experiments to her own daughter. Sue has a strange dream that night that combines visions of the explosion and her encounter with Supermoon. Sue is startled to find that one of her arms is vanished when she awakens in the morning. It returns immediately, but she is so sick that she throws up in her bag and hides it from her dad to make it seem like nothing is wrong. Before departing, Christopher drops Sue off at school and informs her that Maria will be living alone in the house for a few days because he will be working abroad. Sue is not happy about this. Sue then realizes she is the only one who didn't receive an invitation to the impending Halloween party. While checking her locker, when she goes to get her comics, a new boy named Toby who also likes Supermoon approaches her. Mean girl Eileen and her pals, who often annoy Sue, interrupt their conversation. Sue feels so horrible that her entire body vanishes as they steal Toby's attention. She rushes to the restroom in fear and grabs the paper towels. When a girl exits a cubicle at that precise moment, she notices the paper moving by itself and runs away, fearing the lavatory is haunted. Sue then washes her hands, which causes her body to reappear. As a result, when the girl and her instructor return, no one believes their story, and they depart. Sue then places her hands under the dryer, but as soon as she does, her arms and body vanish. Drill, who doesn't care if anything was destroyed, orders Maria to get everything set for a fresh conference while still at the lab. Things start falling off the table when Drill leaves, and Sue makes herself known before tumbling to the ground and reappearing. Sue says she still feels fatigued when she wakes up the following morning at home. Sue receives a warm beverage from Maria to help her regain energy, and when Sue touches it, she turns invisible. As Maria panics, Sue opens the refrigerator, and her body reappearing proves that she is controlled by temperature. Heat renders her invisible, and cold resurrects her. Sue calls her out, stating that her mother only views her as an experiment because Maria wants to do some tests and warns her not to go any place for safety concerns. She just wants this to end because she feels like a scary monster. Sue disregards her mother's warning and attends class nevertheless. She attempts to call her dad as well, but he doesn't answer. Toby is performing some extremely impressive bicycle feats in the schoolyard when he notices Sue and approaches her to talk about comic books. Eileen and her crew interrupt them once more, telling Toby that he is too cool to spend out with Sue. Eileen gets a call out of the blue with a very strange ringtone, and she is so embarrassed that she flees. Sue turns around and realizes that a strange girl from the robotics club, pulled this joke on her. Lenia unexpectedly appears at the school and brings Sue to the lab so that Maria can conduct some tests. She claims that Sue's body was where the NT 2060 entered, and when she examines her wounds, she finds that they have already healed. By using a heating pad, Sue can choose when to turn invisible. They learn that anything she touches, including other people, also vanishes with her, as demonstrated by Lenia caressing Sue's bare arm. Sue, though, is still detectable by an infrared camera. Maria wants to remove all of her studies, since she starts to worry that this power can be dangerous or utilized for bad. When Sue hears Lenia disagree, she shouts at her mother and reminds her that they need all that information to find an antidote before scurrying away. Sue is quite exhausted after utilizing her talents, so she decides to take a nap in the school's basement for a while. She quickly falls asleep, but since the robotics club is in the basement, App quickly wakes her up by hurling water in her face. The girls then head to a neighboring cafe where Sue informs App about her power, but App doesn't think Sue is real. As soon as Eileen and her friends come and begin making fun of them, Sue seizes the opportunity to support her claim. She turns invisible with the heating pad and attacks Eileen with coffee and a ton of condiments, scaring her off. She then reappears, and App declares her to be amazing. Later, when Sue tells her mother the tale, Maria laughs, which makes Sue feel odd and upset. Maria offers her sincere apologies and informs them they must remain hidden till everything is over. The security tape of Maria and Lenia performing experiments on an unseen Sue is presented to Drill by a lab employee, and Drill quickly instructs his employee to keep it quiet. Maria brings a dozing Sue home later in the evening. Unknown men suddenly materialize behind her as she approaches the passenger door to retrieve her daughter, kidnapping her. Sue is awakened by Maria's screams and overhears her mother talking about finding Alfred and a red mask. The moment Sue starts to turn invisible, the car alarm goes off and the men leave without Sue. After that, a horrified Sue phones her father for help. But Christopher doesn't buy the claim of invisibility and assumes the kidnapping was also a prank. Sue arrives at her school where Toby is practicing his bicycle stunts, since she has no idea where else to go. Toby consoles Sue when she had a breakdown and takes her to his place. When he offers her some tea, she turns invisible. Sue calls her a freak, but Toby corrects her, saying her power is incredible. Although she expresses her gratitude, Sue still stops him from calling the police and doses off on his shoulder. When Sue and Toby arrive at Maria's car the following morning, the door mysteriously opens by itself. After they have found Maria's laptop bag, Sue gets a strange call instructing her to hurry up and get in the trunk of the car. The two teenagers enter the trunk both when it opens on its own and after they close it, allowing them to hear the voices of several men who are driving the car to Drill's facility and checking around. When the trunk is finally opened, they discover App, who made the call and has since used a taser to defeat the men. Then App discloses that she has security tape that allegedly depicts Maria being abducted by a van owned by Drill's business. According to App, Drill is trying to coerce Maria into producing more NT-26D. Sue will break inside the facility to rescue her mother, bringing Toby along and disguising the two of them. Toby trips and loses Sue's hand while they are moving through a hallway. As a result, 3 scientists can see him. He begins to tell a tale about a gateway, but fortunately Sue catches him and turns him invisible once more. When they get to the lab, Toby discovers Maria's phone and a sample of NT-26D, while Sue nods off in a chair. Sue is astonished when Maria calls her at that very moment to tell her she has managed to escape her kidnappers and asks her to meet her in the old market near the fountain. The line abruptly cuts out as she continues to claim that she is being pursued. Sue receives a call from her dad while the group visits the fountain later in the afternoon. She soon hangs up though as she notices some dangerous individuals pursuing them. The first guards pass them by while Toby kisses Sue to cover their faces, but Drill soon joins them and recognizes them right away. While the guards are fleeing after App uses a drone to kill the majority of them, Drill is startled to see Maria and wonders why she is there. Alfred follows Maria's last call, which reveals the location to be in the middle of nowhere, and the group shelters behind trash cans. Toby, however, argues that's just another trap, and that Maria is a part of the plot since she brought them here. The inference infuriates Sue, but their dispute is cut short when Eileen calls Toby on his phone. Sue hangs up the phone and disposes of the phone to prevent them from being found out. The group borrows a bike from a delivery man as they spot the dangerous men getting closer, not realizing that Lenia is driving a car behind them and pursuing them. When they eventually discover that Drill's men have blocked the road, Toby devises a strategy. Using Sue's strength and App's flux capacitor, Toby jumps with the bike by imitating an Eastern time jump, allowing them to pass over the vans and safely escape. They arrive at the suspiciously abandoned factory Alfred tracked a short while later. Sue mocks Toby and tells him he'll be happier at the Halloween party with Eileen, because he still believes it to be a trap and doesn't want to go on. After a hurt Toby departs, App and Sue find themselves encircled by surveillance drones and unable to deploy Sue's invisibility suit due to damage sustained during the bike ride. The girls flee and attempt to hide, but they are quickly located once more, so Sue decides to utilize the NT-26D sample Toby discovered. She hurls it towards the drones, setting off a massive explosion that also knocks her out. When Christopher gets home, He first discovers a huge mess throughout the house and then a burglar. Sue is startled to see Maria reading a comic book by her side as she wakes up in her bed a short while later. When Sue relates what happened, Maria responds that it was all a dream and inquires about Sue's pals. Sue reveals that Toby is at the Halloween party and that App is in the abandoned factory, which is strange because she doesn't recall telling her mother about them. Sue checks the door and the windows after Maria has left, but they are locked. Alfred interrupts her grumpiness because he has something to show her. Outside, Maria makes a call to her supervisor to let her know she has the girl and will look after the other teenagers. When her body begins to change, it becomes apparent that she has actually been Lenia all along, posing as Maria. When an automobile approaches the factory, App becomes anxious and is then relieved to see Maria. Sue panics when she sees her mother later when Maria and App walk into her room. She hurls Alfred in her direction, and after the AI recognizes her as the actual Maria, they embrace once more. Sue then clarifies that only members of her family are permitted to utilize Alfred, and plays a recording of Lenia injecting herself with Sue's blood so she can gain power as well. When NT-2060 and Sue's blood are combined, a super serum is created that gives each individual unique abilities. They realize Sue will be killing all the witnesses after recalling the odd talk she had with Lenia regarding her pals. Maria and the girls get in the car to pursue Toby, while Lenia sneaks into the Halloween party where he is. Maria reveals during the journey that she was only able to escape because of Drill's assistance. It turns out that he has been on their side the entire time and was pursuing Sue to give his help. She also admits that the antidote was finished, but Sue declines it because she prefers her current status as Invisible Sue. They can use it to defeat Lenia, though. Sue becomes envious when they arrive at the party and see Toby dancing with Eileen. While Sue searches the dance floor for Lenia, App approaches the DJ and tases him until he passes out. The real Eileen is discovered to be comatose in the bathroom, while one of Eileen's friends tries to speak to her, but is ignored. When the girl remarks on how different and cruel Eileen has been today, Sue realizes the woman is actually Lenia in disguise. Sue finds Eileen's friend crying. Sue tries to get in touch with the others, but only App answers because Maria has left the car. App locks the doors and turns on the fog as a distraction as the scary men come. Toby doesn't understand why he should believe Sue as she describes the issue as she snatches him and starts dragging him away. Sue apologizes for what she said earlier and begs for Toby's assistance out of desperation. But all of a sudden Lenia manifests in her actual form and seizes Toby. The door is eventually opened by the men and Sue disappears, telling Toby to attack. When Sue returns to give Lenia the antidote injection, Toby slaps her to get her off of him, resulting in both of them falling into the pool. Toby dives into the water to save Sue, and App starts fiddling with the lights, while pretending that this was a special Halloween display. The real Eileen is discovered in the restroom moments later by a teacher, and the group manages to flee while carrying an unconscious Lenia on a cart. When they get outside, Laura is waiting for them and tells them that App's mother instructed her to fetch her up. The moment Toby recognizes Laura's chair as the object in the corner of Maria's video, the trio almost leaves with her. The scary men then announce that they have taken Maria, Drill, and Christopher hostage as a number of vans pull up at that very moment. Sue is too exhausted to walk, so Alfred orders her to contact 911 before shutting down due to water damage. Then Laura explains that Lenia has been working for her all these years, watching out for Maria and her innovation, because Lorne needs it for her own company. In order for Laura to threaten to harm them if Sue doesn't accompany her to give her blood, the men also capture App and Toby. Sue, however, finds a solution by injecting herself with the last of the antidote, rendering her blood useless. When a vengeful Laura approaches for retaliation, Sue strikes back by attaching App's flux capacitor to her chair. While Sue is unconscious, the police show up to put a halt to this as Laura starts rolling around erratically. Sue eventually awakens to find Christopher keeping an eye on her. She can tell he's playing a practical joke on her when he claims she tumbled down the stairs and everything was a dream. Maria then says Sue can keep Alfred after fixing him. Sue finally returns the favor by giving her mother her birthday gift. When Sue feels better, she creates a new comic book illustration to prove that even without her superhuman abilities, she still exists. When she goes to meet her pals and tries to kiss Toby, she ends up throwing up first. Alfred intervenes to point out that she is rejecting the antidote. As they shout that they are the Fantastic Three, Sue enthusiastically grips her friend's hands, causing them to vanish into thin air. Outside the building, Dr. Drill starts to change and reveals that he is actually Lenia.